breaking news tonight. The Treasury Department says it will miss today's deadline from House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal to hand over 6 years of President Trump's personal and business tax returns. In a letter to Chairman Neal released just moments ago, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin wrote, "The committee's request raises serious issues concerning the constitutional scope of congressional investigative authority, the legitimacy of the asserted legislative purpose, and the constitutional rights of American citizens. The legal implications of the request could affect protections for all Americans against politically motivated disclosures of personal tax information, regardless of which party's in power." Well, this morning, President Trump repeated his own refusal to release his returns using his well-worn alibi.
And while I'm under audit, I won't do it. If I'm not under audit, I would do it. I had no problem with it. But while I'm under audit, I would not give my taxes. I would love to give them, but I'm not going to do it while I'm under audit. It's very simple. Remember, I got elected last time, the same exact issue, with the same intensity, which wasn't very much, because frankly, the people don't care.
Strangest time in the world. Actually, 64% of the American people want to see the tax returns. They want him to put them out. So that's not true. Anyway, let me ask you about this. Thank you for joining us right now is Congressman Dan Kildee of the Ways and Means Committee and Heidi Pressley. Thank you for joining us. Let me ask you about this this thing. The law says they shall.
Right.
How do they get around this with this BS response tonight from Mnuchin?
They just don't do it. And, you know, the president signaled pretty early on that he did not want to have these returns released. But the interesting thing is we didn't ask the president for these returns. We asked the commissioner of the IRS. And it's our position that there's real clarity on this, that the commissioner is duty-bound to follow the law. He swore an oath to uphold the laws of the United States and its Constitution. Section 6103 of the tax code is one of those laws. It says he shall furnish them. And it's not up to the executive branch or anybody in it to determine for the legislative branch what they consider to be a legitimate subject of legislative inquiry. We are looking at the question as to whether or not the IRS is properly enforcing laws, tax laws on the President of the United States and trying to determine whether we need to take action to ensure that they do. This is a legitimate legislative inquiry. Now, there are other reasons that we'd like to see President Trump's returns, but this is a specific and clear inquiry that is intended to inform the committee on its work.
What's your next step? They said no.
Well, we'll see. I think Chairman Neal is really driving this, and I have a lot of faith in him that he's doing this right. He's been very deliberate about it. So I think the next step is to, speak to our counsel and make a decision about what we'll do. But I will assure you of this, and everybody, we're not going to say, oh, okay. We're going to continue to assert this position, and we're going to use every legal avenue available to us.
Heidi, I keep waiting for a reckoning. I keep waiting for somebody issue to get to the Supreme Court and have them decide that this president can do anything he wants, because it seems like that's where we're headed. Either we have a dictator or we have a constitutional system or not.
Mick Mulvaney foreshadowed all of this weekend when he told us, you, the American people, will never see these tax returns. And that is code for the president is willing to take this all the way to the mat, possibly all the way to the Supreme Court. So the congressman and I were talking about this before. This could really take a long time to play out, but that may be exactly where it's headed, because the Democrats are not showing that they're going to cave in on this. And the White House is giving every indication that they are not going to cave in on this. You had Mulvaney's comments. We know, Chris, that lawyers at the Treasury Department and the White House General Counsel were in touch in anticipation of this, even before the formal request came through. And so what this looks like is just an attempt to stall the inevitable, which is that they're going to say no, they're going to give a denial, and then challenge you all to take them to court.
And this is really a problem, because the fact that there was dialogue between the White House and Treasury, but even before this request came in, elevates some of our concern that the White House is trying to influence the Treasury Department and specifically the IRS when it comes to any question involving Donald Trump. That's the basis for the inquiry in the first place, and all they've done is add fuel.
So it's not a government response, it's a personal attorney's response. Anyway, a pair of hearings yesterday, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin would not provide a specific answer on how he would handle that request for the president's tax returns.
We did receive the request, and as I've said in the past, when we received the request, it would be reviewed by our legal department, and it is our intent to follow the law.
Intent to follow the law. Well, the 1924 law cited by Ways and Means Chairman Richard Neal clearly states, quote, upon written request, The Secretary, that's the Secretary of Treasury, shall furnish such committee, Ways and Means, with any return or return information. As Heidi mentioned, Mnuchin did acknowledge his department had been in contact with White House lawyers over the request.
Our legal department has had conversations prior to receiving the letter with the White House General Counsel.
And did they brief you as to the contents of that communication?
They have not briefed me to the contents of that communication. I believe that was purely informational.
You believe what was purely?
I believe that the communication between our legal department and the White House General Counsel was informational.
Well, at a separate hearing later in the day yesterday, Mnuchin said his department was not taking direction from the White House.
Did the White House ask your team not to release the tax returns?
We would not ever ask for the White House's permission on this, nor did they give us the permission. As I've said, we consulted, which I believe was appropriate, of our legal department.
That's a nice legal term here. And I get back to my question to you, Heidi, as the journalist here. It seems to me that when the law is as clearly written as that, and the letter is carefully prepared by the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee to meet all the standards of the law, carefully written over months, in fact, what's the Supreme Court going to do here? The Republican Supreme Court.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you that politically speaking, as the political journalist, this is the president's red line. And he has made this clear from day one that delving into his personal finances is crossing that red line. And we already have an indication, Chris, of what we might find in those tax returns, a story that I believe was grossly undercovered by all of us about the Trump family's history of dodging taxes, and that Trump himself personally benefited to the tune of close to $400 million in inheritance via tax dodges from his father. So if this was a Trump family tradition or something that they've done over the years, what do you think that we may find in those tax
Well, they're being
returns?
audited, of course.
Well,
Of course, I'm being sarcastic. We have no evidence at all he's being audited, right, Congressman?
No evidence that he's being audited. That's actually one of the things we want to know. And it's not just whether his individual return is being audited, which has been a practice of the IRS. But in order to get an accurate view of Donald Trump's financial situation, you have to look at these other entities. And that's why they were included in the request. We have no idea whether the other entities are under what
Do you know if is he being audited?
We don't know. He says he is.
That's part of what you can get, too, is the correspondence to prove
That is right.
if that was ever true.
Well, we have a law and we have a president. We'll see who wins. The Congressman, Dan Kildee of Michigan, of Flint, Michigan. Thank you for coming here. Heidi Prez, that's Michael Moore country. Up next,
Also of Michigan.
That's right.
Michigander. I love that word. Michigan.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.